I just presumed, in Rishi Sunak's defence, that he must have been utterly unaware that Esther Jai was in the public gallery before he tried a transphobic joke in the chamber. But it appears, and people listening to the programme are clearly paying rather more attention than I was to the programme I ostensibly present. It appears that Keir Starmer did actually welcome her to the chamber before Rishi Sunak stood up and made his rather, I think you just coined the word crass.
It's crass. It's tasteless,
crass.
Isn't it? Crass.
Crass.
I'm a posh girl, really.
Crass. Never heard it called crass before.
Sorry. Crass,
That's okay.
crass.
No, I think it's crass, but I like crass.
Sure.
Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg probably says crass. So there are at least two of you in the world. But that's bad, right? Because it's going to distract. Well, I mean, it's probably bad for Starmer that it's going to distract from quite a good PMQs for him. But it puts Sunak in a very ugly box.
It does. It's tasteless, isn't it? And was he not listening to when Starmer mentioned
again, I'm
it?
doing that thing. I'm being too generous, perhaps.
Look,
I presume he wasn't really concentrating because he was waiting to see what the thing he was going to have to respond to would be.
But usually politicians are given the nod to important people that are in the chamber, and Rishi Sunak's team should have known that. They should have told him before that. They should have briefed him. Did he then, jump to an attack that he has obviously used in previous Prime Minister's questions? Yeah. And not think about it? Was it like an unscripted remark, possibly, or was he
because
just
he's used it before? It's one of his break glass.
Of course, he's used it before, and obviously Tory MPs usually cheer at that sort of thing. And but yes, it's a bit unclear about why he would have felt that this was an appropriate thing to say.
Because I'm getting rinsed for it on my socials, on the inbox. I did categorically get that wrong. I just presumed he couldn't have. Whether he knew or not, we don't know. Whether he noticed or not, we don't know. But he categorically, it was said by Keir Starmer
in the chamber.
Before Rishi Sunak stood up. We'll have a listen to it, actually, just to be absolutely clear. And for anyone wondering why this is significant, what you have is a young transgender woman being murdered. In part, one of the motivations of one of her murderers was a hatred of transgender people. And Rishi Sunak very much appealing to the hatred of transgender people in the choice of, I'm going to have to use the word comment.
It was a joke.
That he elected to make. So here it is.
Brianna Ghey's mother, Esther, has touched us all. As a father, I can't even imagine the pain that she's going through. And I'm glad that she's with us in the gallery here today.
Clear as day, isn't it?
It is, but possible that he didn't.
He should have been listening.
Clearly.
Should have been listening. And
should we listen to his to the joke as well, just to be clear about what's happened here?
But it's a bit rich, Mr. Speaker, to hear about promises from someone who's broken every single promise he was elected on. I mean, I think I counted almost 30 in the last year. Pensions, planning, peerages, public sector pay, tuition fees, childcare, second referendums, defining a woman. Although, in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn. The list goes on, but the theme is the same, Mr. Speaker. It's empty words, broken promises, and absolutely no plan. Keir Starmer.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber, shame, parading as a man of integrity when he's got absolutely no responsibility. Absolute. Of all.
I mean, it doesn't really matter whether she's there or not in the context of the comment, but the fact that she was is. I think that's just really sad and quite awful.
It is, and just 24 hours ago, he was asked about her comments. Obviously, she's been on the media the last couple of days calling for under-16s to have different phones, with not to have social media apps on them, obviously because of the role that social media played a part in the tragic murder of her child. And Rishi Sunak was asked about this, and I think he said just about 24 hours ago in another interview that she was an inspiration, and that he, was really, touched to hear her story, and to make that joke just really comes across as terribly tasteless.
And I suppose hopefully he'll stop now, regardless of the context or whoever is in
There
the
were plenty of other examples of Keir Starmer changing his mind, which he could have pointed to, and he obviously did, but it really took the sting out of his argument there, and I think he was very much on the back foot for the rest of those Prime Minister's questions, because I think he realised instantly, and he would have known instantly, oh no, I've made a mistake.
Yeah. The bet came up as we probably expected.
Yes, this bet that the Prime Minister was I think it's fair to say pressured into by Piers Morgan during an interview where he bet £1,000 that he would see the flights take off to Rwanda. I think it was by the election. And yes, there are obviously critics have pounced on this. And I think, Keir Starmer mentioning it, obviously we saw Stephen Flynn mentioning it. It does tap into this narrative of Keir Starmer saying, you don't get it. You just bet £1,000 like nothing. You're rich. And everybody else in the country doesn't quite understand how you can just frivolously bet this. And you mentioned this off-air, that he made a betting joke, didn't he? He said...
Yes, he said in each way bet.
He
said, so either, I mean, we proved yesterday that he's lying when he said he wasn't a betting man.
He is a betting man.
Not least because he's a hedge funder, but also because he'd spoken to Testmaster Special in some depth about all the fun he had spread betting.
Before. Exactly.
That's right.
And he then says, I don't bet.
But you have to be a betting person to know why it's funny to make a joke about an each way bet.
You can't. I even as a non-better, I can kind of understand it, but
it's not a weak bet, an each way bet. You're basically saying you're going to get.
So is that
placed.
when you bet the same on both sides?
No,
is that it?
No.
Oh,
it's when you you can't bet the same on both sides.
Why not?
Well, but that wouldn't be an each way bet. That would be two bets.
I see.
Two bets on the nose.
What's an
each way bet is when you're betting to win or to get placed. So you bet twice. So a £5 bet each way costs £10, and you win if you come first, but then you win a smaller amount if, depending on the race, if you come second or third, or in big races like the National, fourth or fifth might be included.
He definitely knows more about betting than I do, because I don't know.
As clearly do I.
Yeah, clearly. That's not hard, apparently.
But to claim he's not a betting man was a pathetic attempt to wriggle off the embarrassment of doing with Piers Morgan what he failing to do with Piers Morgan, what he did do with Nick Ferrari, who, this is for Nick to account for, who made exactly the same crass and attention-seeking offer of a bet on something as serious as the Rwanda story a couple of years ago.
I think, in the Prime Minister's defence, he is trying to say, I'm so confident in this.
Yeah.
I think he shouldn't have done it, but I think he was trying to say, and I think he slipped up by obviously doing that and saying, yes, I will. I think both of them said, yes, they would give it to a charity, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Sure. But yes, it doesn't look good, and I think it taps into that Keir Starmer narrative that he keeps on pushing. If this guy doesn't get it, he's rich, he doesn't understand your problems, and that is something we're going to continue to see in the run-up to the election.
What else came up? Remind me.
Obviously, what Rishi Sunak was able to be strong on in that Prime Minister's questions, I think the only thing I think he was strong on was the 28 billion row that Labour just cannot seem to get away from.
Do the public care about this, do you think?
I think the public care about the issue of the environment.
Yes.
I think Labour have made it a huge part of their offering. It was obviously launched at their party conference, I think 2 years ago now. It's been a very big part of their economic offer to the nation, is that we're going to grow the economy by going green. We're going to spend this amount of money. They put the figure on it. And now they're getting themselves into knots about whether they will stick to this figure of 28 billion. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer came out and said he would. Just last week, I think maybe the week before now, Rachel Reeves on LBC refused to say that 28 billion figure. And that's a really strong argument for Rishi Sunak to make. Well, you've got two people on your front bench and you can't really make your mind about what your position is. If these guys want to go into government, they really need to get themselves sorted out. And for a lot of people, it is very important to know exactly, and for businesses, right? Labour are trying to be the party of business. They need to show what they are saying is going to be what they are actually going to do in government. And there is clearly a big row within the Labour Party about whether to drop that figure or not.
And once again, Stephen Flynn sort of filling in some of the spaces that Keir Starmer feels he can't go into.
He would mention the bet as well, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
So that was a sort of different two sides of that. But yes, saying that they're, he mentioned gambling. He said Conservatives gambling with lives, trusted it with the economy. Why is he now betting on an asylum seeker, and will he apologise? And I didn't hear a squeak of an apology from the Prime Minister on that one either. Something I thought Sir Keir Starmer might mention. I think he missed an opportunity to talk about the Popcons, your new favourite political party.
Keir Starmer would have done that.
I'm not. He didn't do it, did he?
No, but I don't know that what does he do? Because Rishi Sunak hasn't got any. Has he got any of? Link. These people really are his enemies. So he could have gone in on the division.
Get in the same party as him.
Could have quoted Henry Riley and asked from yesterday's conference and asked how many factions are there currently in the country. That would be quite a good question, actually.
Yeah.
We should submit these next week.
We should
drop them off. Well, how many factions are there? And he could read them all out.
5
like
groups plus at least this one.
We
right?
think there's 12.
You think that's 12?
Well,
okay.
if you include things like the Northern Research Group.
Oh, yes, they're a mini
and the
baby faction.
And the ERG, and there's a China Research Group.
I see.
So if you include all of them, there's New Conservatives, I think.
Yep. That's one of the
Nation
five.
Tories,
Yeah,
but they're
that's
not.
one of the five.
So
they're a big group. One Nation
Yeah.
Tories are big. They're quite quiet, I'd
powerless.
say.
That's Damien Green and chums.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a. How many factions are there?
There's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah, the Conservative Party are a very divided party, and the argument is that divided parties don't win elections.
There is a line here that I've never heard before. I very much doubt that it is the original work of whoever has sent it in, and I can't find the text anyway, so I can't credit whoever sent. Have you ever heard this before? Rishi Sunak is a shiver in search of the spine.
Ooh.
Have you heard that before?
No. Is that a quote from...
I quite like that. No, it's a quote from Dave.
Lovely.
Anyway,
Thanks,
and
Dave.
Mike in Sutton points out that Starmer was visibly shaking with rage at that by Sunak, although Gary reminds us that he is a barrister. But yeah, I do think actually, because if Brianna Ghey's mum Esther is there as a guest of Starmer, which seems quite likely given that he was the one to draw attention to her presence there.
Yeah, perhaps.
then
Perhaps he didn't know.
Starmer would be actually offended, not just politically offended, but
Yeah,
personally.
my
He'd be
guest.
embarrassed that you have insulted this woman who I have invited here to see, to hear the Prime Minister pay tribute, in a sense, to your daughter, and B, to show you the workings and how seriously we're taking your suggestions, and then Rishi Sunak stands up and does a little bit of mild transphobia.
Yeah.
Not a good week for him.
No, and it was a very bitty Prime Minister's questions, wasn't it?
was.
It was just a lot of mudslinging and insults, and nothing really seemed to take hold as a leading narrative. We had mention of dentists, labour in Wales, waiting lists, tax avoidance, spending. There was not one theme that the Prime Minister or Keir Starmer kept to throughout that. It was quite bitty, it was quite rowdy, it came across as a little bit fragmented, and I don't think there's anything. If you say to the Joe public, what do you remember out of that Prime Minister's questions, I think it would struggle to pull out a highlight or a low light from that one.